Hey guys, Solo here. So today we're talking about a video that is gaining a lot of traction by CNBC titled Why Men Are Leaving the Workforce. And I really wanted to comment on this video because there's a lot of things happening in the world that men should be aware of. And I'm pretty sure a lot of men are aware of it. But let's see what the talking points are by the mainstream media, MSM, right? And let's get straight into it. Here I go.
Men have been steadily dropping out of the workforce, especially men aged 25 to 54, who are often considered to be in their prime working years. As of August 2024, 13.7% of prime-age men were not working, compared to just 7.2% in 1954.
The long-term decline in labor force participation by so-called prime-age men is a tremendous worry for our society, for our economy, and probably also for our political system.
There's a surplus of prime-age workers who could be working and aren't, and that's this puzzling problem.
It's not a puzzling problem. They're trying to make it sound like these men don't want to work. I know a lot of people, guys, that they went to school, right? For example, there's a guy in the comments of this video that mentioned that he went to school for computer engineering and he is working at a restaurant as a waiter, right? I have a buddy that went to school. I forgot what he went to school for, and he can't find a job in his field, right? So imagine you go to college, right? Let's say as a computer engineer, and now you're $80,000 to $120,000 in debt. And any job that you apply for says that you must have a minimum of 5 years work experience or 2 years work experience. So if you are somebody who just came out of college, a lot of these jobs, they're not going to even look at you. And even if they were to hire you, they're going to lowball you because of your lack of experience. So in other words, what I'm saying is that if you go to college and then you come out, it's hard to find a job. And if you don't have the experience, then they're not going to hire you either. Meaning if you don't have college experience, then they're not going to hire you either because they're going to use that against you. Let's continue.
The unemployment rate for prime-age working men sat at 3.4% in August 2024. This number primarily includes those who are unemployed and looking for a job. But about 10.5% of men in their prime working years, or roughly 6.8 million men nationwide, are neither working nor looking for employment, compared to just 2.5% in 1954.
What's surprising is it's not a COVID phenomenon, it's not a recession phenomenon.
And for every prime age...
Let's stop. So let's not be disingenuous, because they changed the definition of what a recession is, right? Typically, if there's not GDP growth for 2 quarters or something like that, and I could be mistaken, then it's considered a recession. But then in 2022 they changed the definition, right? And me personally, I think, and once again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I think that when we talking about inflation, right, something that I talk a lot about on Patreon, that they're cooking the books, because when they gather those CPI numbers, right, they don't even talk about the rise of food prices. They don't talk about that, right? So the reality is that when you look at this type of situation, a lot of men are not working because, in my opinion, a lot of these jobs, you can't get a livable wage. You can't. And we'll talk about more of that in a second, because I'm pretty sure they may address that too.
Man who is unemployed and looking for a job, there are more than 3, and some years 4, who are neither working nor looking for work.
So what's driving men out of the workforce? And if left unchecked, what impact will it have on the U.S. economy? Nearly half of prime-age men out of the workforce cited obsolete skills, lack of education and training, poor work record, or security issues as a reason preventing them from work.
Education.
So like I mentioned that, right? So obsolete skills. So if you have a high school diploma or GED, is that you don't qualify for a lot of these jobs. If we're talking about like computer engineering, computer science, STEM type jobs, lack of education and training, it goes under the same type of thing, because you may not have the skills to do said jobs. poor work record could be something as that you don't have experience in that job, but you may have training or an education in that field, right? But does that prevent you from working? No, it prevents you from getting a job. Let's be honest. It doesn't prevent those men from working because you can put those men in place and you can train them, right? It doesn't mean that they can't work. It just means they don't have the experience or the resume that these companies are looking for. That is what's preventing them. It's not the men, it's these companies that are hiring.
Education is a very important predictor of a prime age man's odds of being out of the labor force.
The big impacts are on the non-college educated groups on their ability to enter and stay in the labor market.
Men who are not college educated leave the workforce at higher rates than men who are. At the same time, fewer younger men have been enrolling in college over the past decade.
If you look at the geography of where the most prime age men out of the labor force are in particular, they tend to be in places that have experienced manufacturing declines. They used to graduate with a high school education.
Yeah, because at one point you could, get a decent job with a high school education. And now, for in the last 30, 40 years or so, women have outnumbered men in colleges. Because now, if you go to college, most of these colleges, they are trying to perpetuate a certain agenda, which is typically anti-men. Let's be honest, right? So now men... And even before the men, and let's say a man, before you even go to college and high school, middle school and such, they gaslight men to oblivion by talking about toxic masculinity, right? But there's no such thing as toxic femininity, right? So imagine now you're a man and you're trying to move ahead in this society, but the society is already against you before you even turn 18. Crazy.
And have good, stable jobs. They weren't glamorous jobs. They were, automobile factories, sometimes mines, other manufacturing jobs, but they were respected, they were stable, and they could support a family. Since then, due to technology-driven growth, a little bit due to Chinese competition, you've had a lot of manufacturing firms and the places where they were located that were one-horse towns become ghost lands, right?
Right. So all the manufacturing jobs move overseas because guess what? These corporations get massive tax breaks. And also you can pay for pennies on the dollar when it comes to wages overseas. Then, of course, we know that in America, right, women got women's rights where they're able to work in the 60s and 70s, which I have no problem with that, if women want to work. However, that brought wages down as well, but taxes continue to increase and escalate. And now we're in the dawn of a new era known as AI, right? And AI has grown exponentially, and AI, once they already have AI robots that can work 24 hours. And the technology that we're dealing with now in regards to AI robots is the worst that'll ever be. In the next 2 years, within the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see an explosion of AI. Not just AI and AI robots, but AGI even. And then within the next 2 decades, the world that you know it today is going to be completely different. Woo, let's get it.
Right?
Wages could also be a contributing factor. Median annual wages for men with a high school diploma have fallen from just over $57,000.
Exactly. So you look at the wages, right? How the wages have fallen. However, cost of living has increased. Inflation has increased, right? In 2000, right, $50 back in the year 2000 would be almost $80 today in terms of value of money. So the power of your dollar has gone down, but the prices have increased. You go to the grocery store, a pack of chicken now is almost $20. Things are getting ridiculously expensive, right? Listen, I bought some food at Aldi's yesterday, right? $50. $50 used to be able to last for 2 weeks. Now I'm lucky $50 worth of food lasts me for 1 week.
$40,600 in 1973 to $45,000 in 2023, adjusted for inflation. At the same time, wages for those with a bachelor's degree or more have increased by about $6,300 during the same period. This decline in earnings led to a 44% growth in the exit rate of men without a college degree from the workforce between 1980 and 2019.
I think, honestly, status plays more of a role than wages. As I said before, you had a manufacturing job, it was respected, you were part of a community, breadwinner for your family, you had organizations like unions or Rotary clubs that surrounded your job, and that's gone.
In general, men without children are also less likely to participate in the workforce compared to men with children, especially men without education or training after high school.
What we have seen is a huge rise in the proportion of prime-age men who've never been married, and a very, very significant decline.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about the studies of 60% of men that are sexless and things like that. And let's keep it real. As a man, men, a lot of us are driven by motivating factors. Meaning, for example, a man who has a child, he's going to be motivated to provide for said child and his wife or girlfriend, right? Where a man that doesn't have a child or a wife, he might not be as motivated, right? And the reason why a married man may be more motivated, which is common sense, is because he has to provide for his child or wife or girlfriend. He has to put food on the table. Where a single man, you might look at the situation and be like, what am I busting my butt for, working 8 to 12 hours, working a job that I can't even afford my own place. I can't even afford my own house and car, right? Because nowadays, if you look at the situation, what is the incentive of men to contribute to society when society deems you bad, when society gaslights you, when society says everything you do is wrong? What is the incentive?
In the proportion who are currently married and have kids at home. And those two trends track closely with the big changes that we've seen about male attachment in the labor force. Correlation isn't always causation, but looking at that correspondence is real important, I think.
Meanwhile, 57% of the roughly 10% of men not looking for work said their physical or mental health was the main reason for not being employed.
And, this is something, guys, that I've talked about a lot in the past. Mental health and spiritual health, I think they're both tied together, but that's another topic. They make a huge impact on your life, right? And when it comes to men and talking about men's mental health, when we're talking about depression and when we're talking about anxiety, right, and things like that, it's considered taboo, even in 2024, where everybody's open now about talking about therapy and mental health. However, when men talk about it, it's considered taboo to do so. And I think right now, especially if you're a young man coming up and you see how it is, then there's a lot of young folks who are thinking to themselves, they have this sense of hopelessness, right? They have this sense of hopelessness because, especially if imagine these Gen Z kids, right? They grew up, they saw, when they were little kids or maybe early teens, they saw the 08-09 recession. They saw, their parents struggling and they had to move out of the house, or their parents lost the house and mom was working 2 jobs, dad was working 2 jobs, or parents got divorced, split up because of all the stress and drama. That traumatized a lot of people. A lot of people got traumatized by that 08 recession. But then fast forward, 12 years later, you're dealing with the C-19. And there's also a lot of Gen Z kids that's when they were supposed to go to college. That's when they were supposed to, the prime of their life, being able to socialize, go outside, meet people, maybe start working for a company because they just finished college. And they got robbed of that experience because of quarantine and dealing with those C-19 restrictions. So now you're dealing with a generation that has been traumatized, not once, but twice. Same with millennials, facts. But then you have to look at it like anytime when it comes to men are always ostracized and demonized when it comes to toxic masculinity, and men should be doing this, and men should be providers, and no 50-50. But what about how men feel mentally? What about men's mental health? Are men in a position of joy, or are men in a position of feeling depressed, anxiety, stress, overworked? Let's talk about it.
With 55% citing a disability, serious illness, and or receiving disability benefits.
The whole question about the health and the mental health of...
And see, now I'm wondering, why they got this old geezer talking, bro? And no disrespect to him, but it's kind of like, this is where the MSM, mainstream media, misses the mark. Why aren't you talking to young men? Why don't you have a group of 10, 20 young men that are ages 18 to 30, 40, or whatever the age range is? Why don't you have them give you the reasons and have that conversation? Because I'm pretty sure it's very easy for them to find 20 guys. They can just find them off the street that would gladly do an interview for 1 hour discussing this matter. Heck, you can go on Twitter right now and find threads upon threads upon threads of men talking about these type of things. But you telling me the mainstream media, MSM, CNBC, right? Because that's what they doing. You telling me they can't find young men to talk about it, so they got to get this old dude to talk for young men? And I know some people might say, well, Solo, you're not young. Well, I'm in that age range that they're talking about. That prime age range, I'm in that age group. So yeah, I think I do qualify talking about this. I mean, let's get it.
Mental health of male workforce dropouts is an extremely important and I think concerning one. Distressing proportion of the men who are out of the workforce say they're using pain medications every day.
A 2017 research paper estimates that an increase in opioid prescription between 1999 to 2015 led to about 43% of the decline in men's labor force participation rate during that period.
So then you have to ask, what sort of pain are we talking about? Are we talking about physical pain? Are we talking about metaphysical pain? There's an enormous amount of depression, mental health challenges that men in...
Yeah, and I can tell you, being stressed out, overworked, underpaid, right? Think about it. A lot of men in this generation, my generation, millennials, zenennials, Gen Z, a lot of us will never own a house because of the fact that wages have stagnated, inflation has gone through the roof. We're on the cusp of not a recession, guys, but a depression. Let me say that again. We're on the cusp of a depression. And I'm going to talk about that more because I believe that we are on the cusp of a depression within 4 months. Okay? And the reality is that now men, and I know MSM will never report this, but men are more aware than ever. Why? Because modern or contemporary men, we have access now to more information than our forefathers did. On social media, you can see what's going on in China right now. You can go on YouTube right now and go see a live stream of a person doing a walking tour in Japan. You can see I Show Speed in Cambodia walking the streets in real time. We have access to more information than any other generation. And so we're more dialed in, we're more plugged in. And especially men that are aware of what's going on in the world outside of their own little bubble, they're paying attention, they're seeing what's going on. And there's a lot of men that see where society is headed, where humanity is headed, and there's a sense of hopelessness. And it's very scary when you get to that point. It's very scary.
This grouping face. Some of this is a chicken and egg question. Did you drop out because you were feeling sad, or are you sad because you dropped out and you're living on the couch?
Unemployment is really terrible for people's well-being. Often people adapt to all kinds of negative shocks, losing a kid, being widowed, whatever, and eventually kind of come back. But long-term unemployment is one of the worst things in terms of that. So what you have is a kind of scarring effect, and it's worse for men because their identity is much more wrapped up in their role as a worker.
And it's worse for men in the aspect because as a man, we pride ourselves, right? Like she mentioned, we pride ourselves on our ability to work, to provide. Even if you don't have a wife or a woman, you pride as a man, you take pride in the fact that you can take care of yourself. Or maybe you can help your mother out, if your mother needs a few extra dollars or something like that, right? But what happens when now you're in a situation where you're unemployed for such a long time? It kills your confidence. It kills your self-esteem. And then you look at the world, you're looking left, you're looking right, and you're trying to make sense of it all. And I remember several years ago, I got laid off from a job, right? And I was unemployed for just 1 month. I mean, I found another job. But the reality is that even that 1 month, it was just kind of like, it was depressing. And the worst things that can happen to a man, an idle mind, there's a saying, an idle mind is the enemy's playground. Why is that? Because as a man, you start to think about the worst case scenario.
Men's declining workforce participation can potentially leave a lasting impact on the American economy.
It means slower growth of the economy, obviously. It means bigger wealth gaps within our society.
It certainly will have an impact on our productivity and probably already is.
The U.S. has been experiencing a severe shortage in labor, still missing 1.7 million Americans from the workforce compared to February.
And you know what? The part that they're not telling you, or maybe they will, is they're going to replace that number and also other numbers, right? They're going to replace that with AI, robots, or AI in general. And then they're going to replace that with immigrants. Let's see if they address that. If they don't, you guys know I'm going to address it.
2020. The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that U.S. GDP could have been $296 to $442 billion higher in 2023 if the country had been able to fill its job vacancies. However, some experts suggest the impacts of men leaving or never entering the workforce could be more sector-specific.
You need young men coming in wanting to replace those people going out. And so if men have primarily been in more manual labor, more blue-skilled and skilled trades, if they're older and they're leaving in their retirement and there's not as many young men coming in, both because of declining cohort sizes, but moving in a different direction type of careers, we're going to be losing that sector of productivity.
Well, and that's another thing, right? And I'm not trying to shade boomers and things like that, but, boomers and even other generations, they're in the workforce longer than previous generations. Why? Because people live longer, right? And because they're living longer, that means that they've got those positions tied and sewed up. They're making better money than a Gen Zer or a millennial would, right? Because of the fact that the jobs are tied up, and then you try to get the job, it's already taken. And then when you try to get into that sector, corporate shipped it overseas to India or China. And make no mistake, guys, AI robots are coming. I've been sounding the alarm on that, right, for the last 2 years. And also with the immigrants coming in, they're going to do the jobs that you don't want to do. Let's keep it real, right? If the dollar crashes 50%, which I believe will happen within 4 months, $20, the $20 jobs that people have been fighting for is going to be $10. Heck, it's almost $10 now with inflation and cost of living, right? So that means, imagine you make $1,600 a month, $20 an hour. That is before taxes, right? $1,600 in most places, you can't even get a 1-bedroom apartment with that nowadays. So you expect people to make $20 an hour, 20 times 80, that's $1,600 a month, pay their car, pay their gas, cell phone, pay their rent. Even if you get a roommate, you're going to be strapped up. Now, here's the flip side. You take that same $1,600 and then you move overseas, right? You can live like a millionaire. But what will happen in 4 months? I give it 4 months or less, within 4 months. So it could happen tomorrow or within 4 months, right? That the dollar will crash instantly, 30%, and then it'll level out about 50%. Meaning that $1,600 is going to be $800. There's a major reckoning coming. And if you're not prepared, it's going to catch you off guard. The reckoning is coming, and it's coming faster and faster. And for those who notice, right, because people are paying attention and they see what's going on, they've been sounding the alarm. But people are so immersed in their own little bubble, in their own universe of their own life, because everybody's the main character in their own life. Everybody, the world revolves around them. It's like an anime. Everybody's the main character in their own life. And there are people that are not seeing what's happening. It's wild. It's crazy.
Despite a steep rise in federal funding, the infrastructure sector hasn't been able to find enough workers, with the construction workforce shortage surpassing 500,000 in 2024.
We are a little concerned about the impact that inflation is going to have and has had on the movement of infrastructure dollars into the actual productive activity. Having a shortage of men in construction is going to raise a problem.
The trend could have a dire socio-political impact.
Yeah, because construction jobs, you overwork the men. Listen, I used to have a neighbor that did construction. When he started, he was a chubby kid. By the end of the summer, this kid was ripped. Okay? I'm telling you, the kid was working 12 hours a day. And at that time, he was making $12 an hour. Now they're probably giving you $20 an hour. They work you down to the bone, right? And then sometimes you even work 16-hour days. And you're busting your butt in this heat. Because, it gets hot out here, too. In the middle of the summer, you're busting your butt in this heat. You're sweating, you're grinding. Your work-to-life balance is all messed up. It's crazy.
Impact as well.
It'll get worse in ways that we would not like. I mean, I think it would lead to more premature deaths, but it will also likely lead to radicalization and polarization, because this is a frustrated, left-behind group with no options.
There are problems that government can address and problems that government can't address.
Let me address what she just said. And I think that Gen Z, they get a lot of flack for being lazy and such. But I also look at the other aspect, because some of that may be true. But I also think that Gen Z doesn't want to work and make peanuts. Work for a company that's not loyal to you, where you're not guaranteed retirement, or, even they can fire you for any reason. They don't have to have a reason in some states. Like New York, they can fire you for any reason that they want. You walk in because your breath stinks, they can fire you for that. They don't have to have a reason. So these companies expect you to leave a 2-week notice when you quit. But when they fire you, do they give you a 2-week notice? Like, hey, Billy Bob, we're going to fire you in 2 weeks. No, they don't. There's no loyalty. Also, low wages. You can't live off these wages, right? And so I do want to apologize to one group of men, the group of men that that I talked about, that if you're living at home and you're working, but I understand it now, because the reality is this: housing markets are insane. My rent has increased 3 out of the last 4 years. It's been insane, right? When you look at the cost of living, even buying a car now, a used car, is ridiculously expensive. It's just insane. So imagine you're a young kid, right? Trying to come up. You're trying to grind. You're in college, school, or you just, left high school, and you're trying to make it in this world. It's insane. The cost of living is insane. And then these people wonder why men are sexless, because then you have these delusional people talking about what the standard should be for men. But wait, toxic masculinity. No, but it's toxic masculinity when you expect men to thrive in this type of situation with delusional standards that don't even make sense. You want a man to make 100 figures, make all this money, pay all the bills, but he can't even get a job. And he went to school for computer science, but he can't get a job because he doesn't have 2 years of experience. So he's got to be a waiter. And because he's got to be a waiter, he's trying to grind. He's living with his parents. He's 25. But he's trying to grind. But see, people don't look at that. This is the reality. And this is what social media never talks about. They don't talk about the fact that when you as a guy trying to grind, you got to go through these obstacles called life. Everybody just looks at Instagram pictures and thinks that, oh, well, It should be like that. It's not real. You gotta grind. You gotta go from point A to point Z. Now you do have nepotism where people just, LeBron and Bronny James. Hello. Look, I'm not hating on Bronny James. I think he's a cool guy from what I know. I don't know the guy personally. But Bronny shouldn't be in the NBA. Let's keep it real. Maybe if you gave him another 2-3 years, maybe, yeah. But right now, Bronny shouldn't be in the NBA. But because his dad is LeBron, he got to slide in. Let's continue, man.
That government can't address.
So one of the first functions that beats out policy is, economic growth. You have a strong economy, you're going to have increased wage structure, and it's going to bring people back into the market.
More than a quarter of prime age men not looking for work cited insufficient pay as a reason preventing them from work. And nearly half said competitive pay, salary, compensation, and/or bonuses was a very important factor when.
As it should, because what's the point of working a job? Then you got to get another job. And now it's to the point that you got to get another job for your other job. So now you got 3 jobs. Imagine you got to work 3 jobs and you're still broke. How can you make that make sense? Because listen, guys, I remember I used to work at a grocery store part-time. And then I also worked at a high-end supplement drugstore for seniors. Not GNC. Please don't say GNC. It was not GNC. This was a specialty store. Right? Now, at that time, listen, I worked that extra job because it brought in extra money. I could go on trips, fun stuff like that. But now, recently, I was talking to a buddy of mine just yesterday. We had we had lunch. And he's making 6 figures, $100,000. But he wants to buy a house. And because of his rent, his car, and also paying off, student loans and such, he has to do DoorDash, which, by the way, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with doing DoorDash. You guys know I'm a huge proponent when it comes to the gig economy. I always encourage people do DoorDash, do Uber, because, that's some extra bread that you can slide through. But he has to do DoorDash so that way he can save money to buy a house. And you got to think, a man who's single, right? He has no kids, no wife. The fact that he has to work 2 jobs just to save for a house is insane. And now you're looking at the situation where they ask the average American, how much money does a family of 4 need, right, to be considered comfortable? And now they're talking about it's damn near $250,000 a year to be comfortable. Cost of living has gone through the roof. And when the dollar crashes 30 to 50%, which I believe will happen within the next 4 months, it's going to cause chaos that a lot of people aren't ready for. Trendsetters, we've been ready because we know what's going on. We've been, we got actions and contingencies into place, right? But there's a lot of people that don't have contingencies. They're not prepped. They're not ready. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what to do. But trendsetters, we're here.
Considering whether to enter or return to the workforce.
For the young, better training, skills training, some form of post-high school education, encouraging that, maybe even subsidizing that. I think part of the youth mental health crisis has to do with what's next. What's AI going to do? What am I going to do? Are there any stable jobs? I can't afford college. All those questions all come together. And so models that help them kind of give them a jump start can be really effective ways of intervening. And there are actually now really promising programs in high schools which teach kids financial literacy. They teach them about equitable entrepreneurship. They teach them about how do you foster better.
Yeah, and it's crazy, but that should be a given, right? Because I remember when we went to high school, the only thing they taught us was how to balance a checkbook. Right? And then unfortunately for some of us, we grew up in households where our parents didn't teach us about money. They didn't teach us how to save money, how to invest in the stock market, how to get a Roth IRA, how to plan for the future. Unfortunately, some of us came from households like that. And so we had to play catch up. Some of us, we still playing catch up. No mustard. Let's go.
Mental health as part of the workplace. And it seems to inspire kids to go on to college, right? Because they sort of see a pathway where they didn't see it before.
29% of men out of the labor force said that training and educational programs was another important factor in considering a return to the workforce.
Having the type of commitment from the employer to train and retain and offer upward mobility for workers, I think, will be very important. Trying to figure out more about career pathways in the labor market and not just.
And the crazy part is like a lot of companies nowadays, they want you to come in and know what to do at the job. They don't even want to train you, right? If you've worked for some companies, some of us have dealt with that. Now, some of the better companies, they're going to train you. They're going to have a training protocol in place where they're going to train you properly. But listen, I've worked for some companies before. It's like, okay, you're here. Okay, do this, right? It's just what it is. It's insane.
The education side. So how is it that someone moves from first job, next job to best job? How do we help people understand and navigate?
Nearly a quarter of working Americans said they weren't satisfied with their growth opportunities in the workplace. Compared to other OECD countries that on average spend 0.1% of their GDP on training their workers, the US spent only 0.03% of their GDP on job training in 2022.
Exactly. See that? America is very cheap. And that's one of the reasons why America is lagging behind when it comes to, certain aspects of GDP. Because look at this right now. Look at this, right? So if you're not willing to train your workforce, your employee, this is why I'm telling you guys, the reason why they're not wanting to train people is because they know the AI is coming in. They already know that. They're just waiting for the collapse so that way they can make an excuse and give you, trinkets and crumbs, call it known as UBI, Universal Basic Income. They were just waiting for the collapse. That way the AI is in place. They already came out. I made a video talking about this earlier this year that by 2030, 100 million jobs will be replaced by AI. Within 20 years, it's probably going to be billions of jobs. They already know what's coming. They're just waiting for it.
Older age groups, it's tougher. You're probably not going to get these guys to retrain, but there are a lot of programs that have largely been pioneered in the UK, much more than here, but we're starting to pick up on them, that literally just try and reboot community activities. They get these isolated people in despair out of their houses. It can make a difference.
Social programs like disability benefits spark contentious debate.
It's very controversial. People have very strong opinions about this. While we don't know why it is happening, we can be pretty clear that the social welfare programs are helping and the disability programs are helping to finance this situation in a way that was never originally intended.
A 2018 analysis by the Joint Economic Committee found that 64% of prime-age men who aren't working were receiving some sort of government assistance.
So the one benefit that they...
And like I said, unfortunately, the UBI, Universal Basic Income, is coming too because of the fact that things are so expensive that, you need government assistance now. And unfortunately, there's certain... parameters where men are not getting that assistance. It's unfortunate. That's the reality where we're at right now.
Rely heavily on is disability insurance. One, because they often are unable to work if they have a physical injury or high levels of addiction or whatever. But it also...
And once again, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful. I really not. I really wish they would have had these prime age men from 18 to 50, right, that they're talking about. I wish they would have had a panel of those men talking about that, because I'm pretty sure they could have gotten men from all walks of life, educated, socioeconomics, race, etc., that would gladly have had this conversation. Instead, we're looking at this lady. I don't know who she is. I know she's saying what she's saying, but the reality is kind of like she's sitting there from her 1960s colored bedroom talking about the plight of contemporary men. And unless she identifies as a man, I don't even know what. Hey, yo, let me chill, because I know this is going on YouTube. Let me chill. But unless she identifies as a prime man, I don't even know why they got her talking, bro.
Provides health insurance, which is huge.
Very much against the initial intentions of the founders of the program. They've ended up with a perverse situation that too often subsidizes or even incentivizes helplessness and long-term dependence. If we thought about...
Yeah. I remember when the first recession happened, I was arguing with this dude about welfare, and he was basically telling me that welfare was messed up because they'll help you, but if you working, because of the fact that money was tight, but if you're working too many hours, then they take the welfare away. So they give you enough welfare to incentivize for you to be on welfare, but they don't give you enough welfare where you are actually able to get ahead. And so you got to make things happen. You know what I'm saying? And one of the things is with a lot of these programs is they want people to be dependent on them. The government wants you to be dependent on them. Why? Because that's how they're able to control you. Because the government knows that if they can control you, then you're going to go along to get along. Like these weirdo red pill YouTubers, right? That are into doing weird stuff at these orgies that they be doing. But that's another topic, right? So they know that if you go along to get along. And see, this is one of the reasons why I got to keep it real with y'all. Our founding fathers, man, listen, guys, they went to war over 1% T-tax. 1% T-tax, our founding fathers got busy. If our founding fathers knew right now what's going on with the tax that you have, a presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, trying to tax capital gains and unrealized gains 24%, they would have got active for real. But this generation right now is just being very, they got you sedated. Your testosterone levels are the lowest it's ever been because, they got you sedated. They got you sedated. And the fact of the matter is that a previous generation would have said, this is tyranny. Let's get busy. Let's get active. This generation is like, yeah, just soft. I got to keep it real. Right? I get it. Like a lot of men are going through it. But here's the thing. The reckoning is coming to the point that a lot of men, you're going to see a lot of angry men in these streets. You're going to see it happening. Because it's coming to a point where you can't even, you can't even work to live no more. It's ridiculous. And you're going to see men get active because this is what was going on right now is just foulness. All this taxing. This inflation, these insane prices, yet the wage gap continues to increase. The richer are getting more money than they've ever gotten in the last 4 years. They continue to become richer. And the poor become more poor. The middle class is virtually eroded. And when the dollar crashes 50%, which I believe will happen in the next 4 months, I've been saying it throughout the video, then the middle class will die instantly. Instantly.
About a system in which we had a work-first principle where the incentives were for getting the training and then showing up at the job and then staying at the job, I think we'd be in a lot better place than we are today.
However, some experts remain doubtful about whether altering the benefits program will lead to meaningful results.
I think until we deal with the deeper problem of ill health, ill mental health, these guys aren't going to respond to incentives.
Everybody is.
No, men will respond to incentives. What are you talking about? If you give men a livable wage where they can afford to, have their own place, their own car, and they can afford, they do a job that is not working them to the bone, where they're able to have money where they're comfortably, that'll be an incentive for them. But you have these jobs where, number one, you're not even hiring these men. Number two, it's not a livable wage. You expect men to turn a lemon cake out of peanuts. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And with that, due to that fact, there's a sense of hopelessness right now. It's very oppressive. And I really think this is all by design. I think this is all by design. All of this, right? The ostracization, marginalization of men. I think it's by design. The gender war. I think it's all a psyop to have for the elites to take control of the people. Because here's the thing. If you have men fighting against women and men, feminism against alpha men and all this other crap, you're not paying attention to your real enemy. Who's your real enemy? The person that's putting these things into place. And until men wake up and realize, men are doing it where we're not working, okay, the system is about to collapse. That's why I keep saying we have less than 4 months. And I'm not saying it's men's fault. I'm not saying that because, once again, there's so much else going on in the world, geopolitically, right? Financially, economically, all these different things going on. And exposure is about to happen. You already seen it with the P. Diddy, Eric Adams situation. There will be more people that will continue to be exposed, more politicians, more CEOs, more movie stars, actresses, actors, musicians, particularly too, politicians. It's going to be a lot of exposure. The system is about to come down and crash. And as it should, because this Babylonian system has enslaved us to the point that we were content being slaves. Let me finish this.
I think until we deal with the deeper problem of ill health, ill mental health, these guys aren't going to respond to incentives.
Everybody is responsible for their brothers. Everybody's responsible for their neighbors and their friends. And we ourselves as citizens can help to shine.
It's a sad part because America used to be that way, where your neighbors, you'd move into a neighborhood and your neighbors would greet you with some food and we would have barbecues with the neighbors. Bro, listen, man, I've lived in this place for a minute where I lived at. I don't even know my neighbor's name, bro. I'm gonna be real. And I know that sounds bad, but I don't even know their names, Brody. I really don't. It's just very sad because nowadays, as a man, society can feel very isolating. Your friends may get married, your friends may move, things happen, but as a man, it's very isolating nowadays. Because nobody gives a crap about the plight of men. Nobody cares. They just expect you to man up and figure it out. But luckily, there's one person that does care about men, and I'll tell you at the end of the video who he is.
Shine a spotlight on this. It shouldn't be America's invisible problem. And the more that we talk about it, the more that we pay attention to it, the closer we get to turning this around.
Okay, guys, so that's the video. What do I think of the video? I think that, guys, it's a real issue. And the reason why you see these people talking about this issue now more and more about men not working, about men's sexlessness, about men not dating is because it's becoming a major issue that is affecting society. Men are not going to play if the game is rigged. And because the game is rigged and men are seeing the okie doke now, society is about to crumble, or one of the reasons why. Because now you have created all these psyops, this gender war, right? Men versus women, right? The psyop. Oh, gaslighting men, toxic masculinity, gaslighting men. But at the end of the day, too, guys, when you look at this situation where living wages, you can't afford now to even live off of $20 per hour unless you live in a certain area and stuff like that, because things have gotten so expensive. And then the fact of the matter is that you have men that may not be motivated because they feel like, well, what's the point of doing all this? I'm just working. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. What am I busting my ass for? And for what? And for who? For somebody else to have their dreams fulfilled, but not me have my own dreams? So what happens is it crushes you mentally. It does. And I think, guys, at the end of the day, when we talk about mental health, right, that's something I talk about because it's something that I've dealt with. I think that at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we deal with when it comes to mental health is spiritual. There's a war going on that we can't see. There's a war going on every day. It's good versus evil, angels versus demons. It's a war going on every day. And you have to decide what you will do every day. Because it's very easy to succumb to the negativity. It's very easy to succumb to it, right? Because at the end of the day, what evil loves more is for people to give up and just succumb to the hopelessness. But good does exist. And that's why, guys, for me personally, right, the good that I found in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Because if it wasn't for Jesus, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Red pill couldn't do anything for me. That didn't do anything for me. But Jesus did. You feel me? And as a man, you have to understand that in the Bible, it talks about that he'll never leave you nor forsake you. And we're at a time right now where so many men are desperate. They're desperate for an answer. They're desperate for help. They're desperate for a job. They're desperate for, even a father figure. People will always disappoint you, man, but God will never disappoint you if you approach him with genuine, sincere faith, if you approach him with sincerity and a willingness to listen and be obedient. And I know some men don't want to hear that right now, but at the end of the day, I was the most miserable doing all that red pill junk, yelling and screaming, just miserable. I thought I could find fulfillment in between a woman's thighs, maybe for 30 seconds, right? So at the end of the day, you have to understand that we're in an era right now where things are just getting worse and worse. And the only thing that will really, where you can find peace, even if the dollar were to crash, even if a food shortage happens, right? Because here they're talking about dock workers are going on strike, which can affect food and things, us getting things. Even if that were to happen, it won't affect us, because if you have the Lord Savior Jesus Christ in your life, you're at peace. You're at peace. So no matter what happens, right? There might be 10,000 on the left, 100,000 on the right. And I know I'm misquoting that, forgive me, but you guys get the point. 1,000 on your left side, 1,000 on your right side, it shall not come near you nor harm you, because God got you. That's all I got to say, man. Keep your head up, guys. I just want people to be aware of the reckoning that's coming, but there is a solace, there is peace. It's your boy Jones, and I'm out. Peace.